Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Green Arrow FPL podcast from Fantasy Football Hub as we head into Gameweek 16 with the new mystery chip now unveiled. My name is Fergi, and I'm here with two fantastic FPL managers. Firstly, as usual, Rich Clarke. How are you? And dare I ask, mate? Dare I ask? I've got to strike up the band. I'm sorry, Rich, but what colour was your arrow in Gameweek 15?
It's just got a bit of a repeat show, this, isn't it, mate? Yeah, good evening, mate. Good evening, everyone. Rotten luck last week, I think, for my team. I'll own the Saka captaincy because I genuinely thought that he was the better pick. So I've got to own the variance on that one. But the thing that really made me laugh, I guess, was Rico Lewis, I think. Finally scoring for me after having owned him since about August, and he finally gets a goal. And I think he lasted about 12 minutes before he then got sent off. So he's compounded my defensive woes for this week, and I'm now down to Lewis Hall, I think, as the only defender I can rely on to get any sort of points this weekend, which is unlikely as well. So yeah, team's in a bit of a mess, mate. Only 50 points, and of course the big story was the captain variance, and I'm sure we'll come on to someone who's done well on the captain, but I couldn't watch the Tottenham game. I literally, after what happened with Saka's goal being disallowed in the 89th minute, I had to just pack up my bags and go to the pub for an hour and a half, which is what I did. What a game I missed, eh? 4-3. I literally knew what was coming. There was an example of when I didn't own Salah early in the season, and I just thought, I've got to take myself away from this Palmer show. And I came back and started to peep under the covers about an hour later after the game had finished, and gradually reveal the 18-pointer, and the rest is history. So yeah, another bad one, mate.
Taking it well, mate, and it will turn. Like Jan literally just said, didn't you, Jan? As we came off here, he said, "You can't believe what stinking luck Rich has actually managed to find himself." But yeah, we'll talk more about that, Rich. But let's welcome the fantastic Jian Batra, who's having a storm of a season. And Jan, I probably brought you on the worst week possible. It's probably your first red arrow in a long time. But yeah, how are you, mate? What was your colour in Game Week 15, and how's your season going?
I'm very well, thank you. It's always great to be back on here. It was a big red. Well, it should have been way bigger. My game week rank was 9.1 million following the Sunday game, so it was set to be my worst game week ever. But thankfully, Ainori gets an assist, Bowen gets a haul, and I recover.
Oosh.
So I'm about 207k, I believe. And wildcarding in 12 means the squad is looking relatively strong, at least for now. And hopefully the defense starts to actually get some points.
So you've had a storm of the season so far, 200k overall. As you say, that's with a massive red. So you were about 130k. What have you done differently to me and Rich and kind of, a lot of other engaged managers?
Yeah, so I would say it's a decent season. Like if you look at, like, for example, the content creators leagues, there's quite a few. Like I think it's like 10, 12 people above me now. So some guys are having really good seasons. The only thing I would say I've changed is in summer, I definitely made a conscious effort to actually try and get better at the game. I realized last year I did too many stupid things, and I was too okay with taking too many big risks. And I learned from people like Rich. I learned from people like Luke, who've had this on the channel as well, just to kind of tone that down and pick my spots a little bit better. So I'd say that's the main thing that has probably helped me this season.
You played really, really well, mate. You're an absolute stormer. Very, very well played. Just before we have a look at my team, welcome everyone in the chat. Dave Hannigan is in. I'm 1974, says, what do we think of the new chip? He said, I like it until I spaff it. We will take a look at the new chip in a minute. Big Lou is in. He said, my mate did Haaland and Buemo and Bruno Fernandes to Saka, Jackson and Salah for a -4. Where's the violin? That is an absolute stinker. That's about a 20-point swing. Damien Cullen is in. D says, are we going to see a return of the legend Adam Hopcroft? Well, if you wait till the end of the show, we may have a bit of news about that. And Dave said, watching the Chelsea game, and this, who says men can't multitask? James Thompson is in and says the new chip will break Fergie and Rich's spaffometer. The possibilities are huge. I've been trying to get my head around it for like hours and hours and hours, and got a reasonable understanding, but goodness me, when you try and overlay that as a plan and work out which is the most optimal way, just the head spins. It'll be interesting to get your take on that, gents. Andrew Savage is in. Excited to hear about the chips. Immortal Technique. Alan's a red, said I captained Saka last week too. Unlucky, very, very lucky. I'm 1994 says violin's almost permanent for Paul Rich. You must be hearing that noise in your sleep this season, Rich. And PT says best show on the market. Greetings to Fergie and Rich. Great to have you all with us. I mean, you guys scored 50 and 47. Should we just skip over mine if you want, or we could?
Yeah, it's probably about the same on it, mate.
It was,
yeah.
Sort of
score. Let's not bother. Let's just go straight.
Well, since it's part of the show, we may as well have a little look at my 84 minus 4 rank halving Green Arrow this week. Laura luck, as these things happen. Flecken assist, 8 Norrie assist, Lewis goal. That was 3 returns out of my back 4. I kept Mbuemo, so I was really contemplating whether to get rid of Semenyo and Mbuemo last week, and I just thought, do I really want to get rid of Mbuemo? They're playing at home. I know his form's been terrible, but we know how FPL punishes us, and he came back in with spades, and that was a difference maker, really. Obviously, with captain in Palmer as well. My transfers brought in Isak, lovely 8-pointer. Chris Wood, he just, every time he plays, he scores almost, doesn't he? And another goal against United. And I was thinking of transferring him out this week, but I'm not sure I can. Home to Villa. We'll touch on that soon. But yeah, massive rank. I took a hit as well. I actually brought in Timber for Anderson, even though he blanked. Obviously got him in place this week as well. So really, really pleased.
Nice. Mate, it's great to see one of us having a week like that.
Do you know what? It's one of these weeks. It just turns the season on its head, don't it? Really feel now. You can got a good team in place, got the right players in place, and push on. So, Rich, yours is coming, mate. Don't worry about it. It's good. It is all good. We just wanted to obviously talk a little bit weathering the storm about what happened with Liverpool and Everton, because it was obviously what a crazy weekend, in terms of the match called off. You got to say probably a lot of casual managers probably left their, I don't think the news broke till about 8:30 in the morning, with the deadline being 11. So probably a lot of managers left their captaincy on Salah, and they had their advice. There was late captaincy switches. There was depleted teams, or probably teams that may have had 2 Liverpool and Everton player. May have played out, 9 or 10 players, which obviously leads to a potential double game. We've actually had an update on that in the last 30 minutes, which we'll share in a bit. And then to just compound it this week, we had the unveiling of the mystery chip, which we'll touch on just next now. But firstly, guys, your thoughts, I suppose, on, you want to touch on the captaincy, Rich, on the kind of variance with because Salah was taken out of the fray. It meant the captaincy was incredibly split, and what that actually meant. It was like last minute decision. And
yeah, I think for me, I was all set to. I think my article talked about making a defensive transfer because my defense was pretty depleted. But for some reason, the postponement, caused me to not only change the captaincy, obviously, but also to rethink whether or not I should roll the transfer. So with Mikalenko even unable to now come off my bench, it weakened my defense even further. So I ended up with only 10 players who had got any minutes last week after Gabriel was a no-show. And really, I probably should have made a transfer. But at the time leading up to the deadline, I was just thoughtful of the fact that no one's keeping any clean sheets, and actually bringing in a £4.5 million defender is probably going to lead to 1 or 2 points, and just the power of rolling a transfer and being able to reorganize for this week, I just thought outweighed that likelihood of losing a couple of appearance points, really. So I rolled the transfer. I don't know whether that was right or wrong. I mean, I was down a player when Gabriel was a no-show, but I now have 2 free transfers, and I can do something more aggressive this week, possibly take a hit and stuff like that. So that was one thing. But then I genuinely looked at the captaincy, and I could see that the horde was going for Palmer. The whole community virtually was going for Palmer, and I thought this was a week to try and go against it, to make up some ground. I mean, I'm 3.2 mil, and I just thought, well, you have to have a week where it works out for you, and Palmer blanks and Saka smashes it, which is like what happened 2 weeks ago when Jian got it right, and everyone else was on Salah or on something else that blanked. So it can work out, but it just didn't. So but I've got to own that. That was a conscious decision. It wasn't like I wasn't unlucky there. I made it my choice. But what would you do? What do you do in those situations, Jian? What are your thoughts? Do you think it was the right thing to do? Was to go against it? It's not always the right thing to do, is it? It's just about
So
timing
I think
it.
this season, I'm only really going against like a Salah or Palmer where I really see like upside in the other player, and I'm mainly looking at matchups and more of it from a footballing perspective as opposed to a data perspective. So yeah, I thought there was definitely the grounds to go against Palmer this week. Like I did it myself, and I ended up with a Jackson blank. I did think he'd probably wouldn't have the goal threat in open play that he carries in other games that he has at home. And to be fair, in the game, apart from the one chance which went through his legs, he didn't actually have too much open play goal threat. But he gets the 2 penalties, which I guess is something that we have to accept, right? He's a guy who's got a lot of penalties, and he's just on them anyway. So that's probably something I didn't attribute enough to. But how likely is it that a player gets 2 penalties in one game, right? Pretty low. So I think you definitely got a bit unlucky there. And Saka had his disallowed goal at the end as well. So yeah, I don't think the decision was warranting of a 16-point swing.
I completely agree. And obviously, I've sat on the fortunate end of the Palmer one there, and this is gonna piss you both off royally. But I was kind of out all weekend this weekend, so I didn't really give it much thought, and that just goes to show, you two are probably there looking at all your data, and Jan's there with his heat maps and whatever. I was trying to figure it out, and I was just like, oh, Salah's not playing. Who's my vice? Oh, it's Palmer. I'll just put it on Palmer. I do tend to. I'm quite a, as you know, I don't tend to go against the crowd unless I really, really, really fancy something. So Palmer was the crowd's pick, so he turned into my pick. But you're absolutely right what you say there, Jan. Really good summary. It wasn't a 16-point swing sort of performance, and the Saka one in particular, Rich, really, he got the late goal. It's fired out. You just like, we've both had these for us and against us. And
I haven't celebrated that wildly since Watkins scored in the Euros, I don't think.
But yeah, we move on, and talk about captain this week. I mean, that's a conversation we'll be having later. Absolutely insane options this coming week now. For those who haven't seen, the mystery chip has been unveiled, and it is the assistant manager chip, and FPL could have made it more complex if they tried. It feels like there's like 12 of them around the table. They all got like a scrap of paper, and they were, right, put down what you think the chip should actually be. They've all written down their idea. They've all put him in the bowl, and then they just pulled them out and said, we'll do that. We'll tell you what, let's do them all. And they've kind of written out on this rule. So try and give a bit of an overview in a moment, but in essence, long and short of it is, you get an FPL, you get a Premier League manager for 3 consecutive weeks from game week 24 onwards. You can use till the end of the season. So we'll run through a couple of the kind of principles now. So available from game week 24 for 3 consecutive weeks. Once you play it, you can't play another chip. So if you use it in 24, you can't play your triple captain chip. You can't play any other chip then until game week 27, for example. You'll have to pay between 0.5 and 1.5 million from your existing budget. So you don't. This is not an extra player. You have to buy him. So you're gonna have to release funds before the time you want to get him as well. The team limit of 3 still applies. So just for example, so Liverpool are probably going to double in 24 or 25, which we'll touch on in a second. But, if you've got Salah, Trent, and, Darwin Núñez, you can't go then and have Slot as well, because that would be four Liverpool players. So that's an example. You'll have to take a Liverpool player out if you want to have Slot, or obviously you go for someone else. It looks like your first transfer of a manager in is going to be a free transfer, I think, in terms of you don't have to use your own transfers, but you can then use your free transfer to transfer the manager out every week. I mean, wow. And just to let you know that Fantasy Football Hub will have all this completely covered with our new chip optimization tool, which is coming very, very soon using AI. So what you'll be able to do on Fantasy Football Hub, you'll be able to go into your team as you do at the moment. You'll be able to click on, compose my chip strategy. It will run through all the millions of permutations for your team and tell you the most optimal way to use all your chips. So that is coming soon. And don't forget, you can get a 30-day free trial of Fantasy Football Hub using the link below if you want. just a little bit on the scoring, gents, before I ask your thoughts, if that's okay. How your manager will score points if the team wins. So, if you've got, Postecoglou and Spurs win, you get 6 points as a standard. If the team draws, you get 3 points. For a goal scored by the team, you get 1 point per goal. And a clean sheet per team, you get 2 points. And you also get a bonus as well. So if your chosen manager faces a club ranked at least 5 places higher in the PL, you get an extra 10 points. This is additional 10 points, or an additional 5 points for a draw. So, it is incredibly complicated. I think the actual principle of the chip isn't that complicated, but when you overlay it with the other chips and the game weeks, it does get a bit complicated. So I'll stop talking now. Jan, would love to hear your thoughts first on this mystery chip.
Yeah, sure. I love it. I think it's great. More chaos, more points available, and I'm really, I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm really looking forward to it. Considering we're on the chip, I'll talk a little bit about like what strategy I'm potentially looking at in its utilization. So if we do get Liverpool to double in, like let's just say 24-25, right? Everton will have Leicester at home and Liverpool at home. Now, with the rule of, we'll call it the 5-team rule to simplify it, where you can get the 10 extra points, I wouldn't be surprised if like Goodison Park, under the lights, manages to pull off a result against Liverpool, right? And I'll also have, considering it's a double game week, Everton at home to Leicester, who they can certainly beat. And given how powerful the chip is, especially with the 5-team rule, what I looked at earlier before I came on was using free transfers to essentially target a team who's a little bit lower down, but I think could win in the 2 following weeks to maximize my upside. So currently, I'm looking at going Sean Dyche in like 24-25, whenever that double game week is. Then moving to Lopetegui for West Ham at home against Brentford. And then I'm going to go Eddie Howe against
Eddie Howe.
Forest.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Because I'm trying to nail those 16 points.
You sure you haven't rehearsed that this afternoon?
I love that, mate.
I looked at it like just before I came on, so that's what I'm considering at the moment.
That is superb. You have to use you have to use a transfer though.
I know.
Free transfer.
I think it's worth it because if I get it right, it's 16 points.
Jian's been rolling transfers since he wildcard. He won't have used one for weeks, will he? You've got loads already.
I made a move you really won't approve of, which I'm sure we'll come to later.
All right.
So obviously that means then though you can't use a triple cap. Sorry, I know we're talking about you in general. Your strategy there, but you can't use a triple captain chip obviously in Salah in 24-25. Yeah. We may as well just actually, while we're on that, we've just had breaking news in the last half an hour. I think the Daily Mirror might have broken it. So up on screen now, we've got Ben Crellin's initial plans. This was like first thing last night, and he says if Everton Liverpool is rescheduled before game week 30, then my chip strategy will probably be, he's put wild card in game week 30, assistant manager, I can't say it, assistant manager chip from game week 31 to 33. There's a double game week 33, free hit in blank game week 34, bench boost in double game week 36, and triple captain Salah in the Everton v Liverpool double game week. So Ben did surmise last night that he thought that it would be a double game week 25. However, the Daily Mirror have reported in the last half an hour that it's very likely to be double game week 24, which means that the Liverpool fixtures, they will have 2 away games, and as you rightly said, Jan, Everton are probably going to have 2 home games. So interested in Rich's thoughts, which we'll get on the chip now. We don't want to delve too deep into this now because obviously we need to digest it. There's game week 24 until the 1st of February, right? And we're going to have lots of content on this in the new year. But yeah, Rich, really interested in your thoughts, on the general sort of chip and how any thoughts on how you're going to approach it?
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep it high level. Okay. I'm not going to say when I'm going to play it. I mean, I think it's a lot to introduce to the game mid-season, just as a throwaway comment. I think there are a lot of people that don't play the game as fanatically as we do, or our audience does, and actually to bring this in mid-season and expect the majority of the game to understand all the rules around it, understand all the upside around it. You could say it's almost like it's an enthusiast's chip.
Absolutely.
Because you unless you really are highly engaged and want to get involved in the planning, which the majority of our community will do, it's not going to appeal to the casual player that amends his fantasy team for 5 minutes on a Saturday morning. So I'm not sure everyone will use it. I think it'll be interesting at the end of the season to see the percentage of uptake in the last 12 weeks. But, perhaps everybody, listening to this pod will think, well, great. The fewer people that use it, the more points for me, the better my rank,
exactly
et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
So, and I'm not sure whether I've seen anywhere whether this is a permanent chip or whether it's going to be a mystery slot year after year. So it could just be a one-off. They might be trialing it. So all that said, it's a bit of fun, isn't it?
Of fun.
It does introduce the opportunity for more variance, and for someone like me that's not just chasing, is like an amoeba bouncing around the universe miles from anybody. It does give me an opportunity to catch up. So I don't hate it, but I don't love it. I think for people who have still got the triple captainship, a lot of people used it in those early weeks when Haaland was smashing it and stuff like that. People who still got the triple captain, it does make it a little bit more difficult, I think, to use 5 chips in the last 12 weeks because, that extra Merseyside derby had kind of freed up a slot. I see Ben is saying, he'll free hit in the blank. Well, I free hit in the blank last season and got 12 points.
29,
remember?
Right?
Exactly. And then the people that free hit in game week 34 got 140 points.
Remember that.
So, I think we pretty much learned that free hitting in a blank game week isn't a great idea. So
depends on the teams. It does depend on the teams.
Exactly.
It was all garbage teams last year, wasn't it?
On the size of the blank, etc., etc. But yeah, it generally is. It does mean now there are almost too many chips and not enough doubles,
not enough
and so
weeks.
that's these are just high level observations. But I also just think that although I love Jian's example, I think it's probably something that shouldn't really be overthought. I think you probably just want to put it on a premium team, perhaps something like Liverpool, where you will only really own maybe Trent and Salah because of all the rotation in the other forward positions. There's room for slot to come into that third thing. And the thing about gaining on a team that's 5 places above you and therefore getting the 10-point bonus. I mean, you've got to be psychic to get that right. I think your example is based on Bournemouth because Bournemouth actually achieved in all the 3-week blocks this season, Bournemouth achieved the highest score of 47 points, I think, in a kind of pseudo run of the chip. But that's when they beat Arsenal and City in that 3-week period, and therefore those 2 teams were 5 places above them, so the 10-point bonus applied. I think I've had an early look at the figures, and your average elite team will score about 30 points in a typical week. I think if you looked at the highest score that Liverpool and Arsenal and City all got, it was all around 30, 31, 32. So in Jian's example, if you want to chase the upside and you get very, very fortunate, you might get closer to 50. So that's my thoughts.
I do. And I'm 1974 in the chat has just said my thoughts exactly. He's put find shit teams and punt away. And I think that'll be the fun of this, I think, is the fact that there's always teams who come like poorer teams who are down the bottom of the league. Who show signs of life, right? But their position belies the fixtures and the form that they've had so far. Wolves is probably a really good example of one who are rock bottom of the league when they game week 10, but we knew they were going to improve, and there'll probably be teams around about that in game week 23, 24, where they've had a tough run. Maybe someone like Forest, for example, who are flying high. They're going to have a stink of a run now. They might drop back down, but actually they're a better team than that, so they might fly again. Maybe, I don't know, Villa have a tough run or something as well. So I do think there will be teams, but yeah, overall I do agree with you, Rich. It's going to be a lot of luck, but I do think you can position yourself to be lucky as well. We're not going to talk anymore about it, only because we're going to be talking about this for weeks and weeks and weeks, especially in January as it's leading up to it. So we don't want to do it to death now, but hopefully I
can't wait to see some of the graphics that come out that show the relative position of teams.
Yeah, exactly.
The upside potential. I think it'll be a bit of fun. But But the one last thought is, if you are having a good season and if you're ranked in the top 100k coming into sort of game week 24 and onwards, you're probably more likely to play it a bit safer,
I agree with that.
aren't you?
Yeah,
and put it on a premium team. If you really want to make ground, then as you say, as the audience says, punt away. So yeah, good stuff.
Discover with Sim says, Rich, has anyone told you that you look like Gary Anderson?
Oh, really? No, never heard that one.
only every week. But yeah, thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you, Discover with Sim. Just to say, my son played Johnny Clayton on Sunday in darts, and he walked in with a walk-on girl, did the whole, the music, the walk-on, banged in a couple of practice darts, and he threw off first and banged in a ton, 20-20, treble 20, my 13-year-old son. So that was quite a spectacle. Cool. That was absolutely amazing.
Very good.
Anyway, I didn't after all that, I haven't actually read my ChatGPT poem about my team. I will rattle through it quickly because I know a few people are enjoying it each week. But just to round off how many did I score again? I can't remember. 84 minus 4. But just to round it off with the poem about my team. Salah stood idle, his match called away. The storm clouds loomed, no Goodison display. But Palmer rose up as the captaincy claimed. 2 goals and an assist, his heroics proclaimed. From the back line to front, the points rolled in. Defenders assisting, a clean sheet win. And Buemo delivered, his boots full of flair, while Wood found the net with a striker's glare. Isak was ruthless, his touch pure delight. Each finish and pass made your tally take flight. A week of success, a masterful plan. Your team took the stage with a bold, roaring stand. So raise up the banners, let glory be sung. Game week 15 was a triumph well won. Through storms and surprises, the squad stood tall. A fantasy triumph, the best of them all. So thank you so much, ChatGPT, for running a review. It's nice when it's normally got doom and gloom and grey and whatever else, but that was a nice one. Yeah. If you haven't seen, we currently have a Christmas offer on at present. If you want to use the full power of Fantasy Football Hub, you can do so now for a full 30 days free. This includes our My Team feature, including recommended transfers, predicted points through AI, dedicated WhatsApp groups for pro members, and so much more. We are also building out a chip optimization tool, which you'll be able to plumb in your team, and it will tell you the most optimal way, including the new assistant manager chip as well. That is coming in the coming week. It's going to be absolutely superb. We're incredibly excited about it. And don't forget, it's all on the Fantasy Football Hub app too. An absolute no-brainer if you want to do well and enjoy FPL. Free for 30 days. Give it a go. You will not be disappointed. The festive period is coming upon us, gentlemen. Christmas trees are up, Christmas crackers, carol singers, mince pies. I've had a few mince pies. Do you like the mince pies with the icing on top, either of you? You know the ones with the ice? Oh, lovely. Bit of Christmas cake as well. Anyway, starving now. But yeah, the festive period, and for the next 4 weeks, looking at the fixtures, Wolves are top of the shop. Home to Ipswich, away to Leicester, home to United, away to Spurs, Newcastle second, home to Leicester, away to Ipswich, home to Villa, away to United, Arsenal third, Chelsea fourth, Man City fifth. They're climbing. Man City are climbing to see if they are back. And down the bottom, Everton, Brentford, Leicester, Ipswich, and Villa have got a very, very tough run of fixtures now. Rich, what is your take for tackling the next 4 weeks?
Well, I was surprised to see Wolves were top of that list in terms of their fixtures. It must be, if you put it out to a longer period, I wouldn't imagine they'd even appear in the top 6. But yeah, I was thinking about selling Cunha, and that's changed my mind seeing that.
I'm thinking of buying him, mate. I got to be honest.
Yeah, well, there we are. So, I mean, the guy I want to buy won't surprise you, but yeah, I think you've got to hold him, haven't you, based on that? And 8 Nori keeps dodging that 5th yellow card. So I'd say Wolves players are a hold. I think Newcastle, Arsenal and Chelsea are all good. There's a particular Chelsea player we haven't mentioned yet that I'm very interested in buying this week. And Newcastle, yeah, they look good certainly for the next 2, don't they? So really like that. City are still an avoid for me, really. I haven't really seen any major improvements in them. Enrique Lewis was the final straw, I think, last week with the sending off, and all going all the way down to Liverpool and Bournemouth in 6th and 7th in the list. There, they're still good options for the festive period. I think I think it's a sell on Brentford assets because they're right down the bottom now, and their fixtures are really tough. Even their home games, I think their next four home games against probably the top four defences. So Brentford are 19th, Everton, Leicester, Ipswich. They're on a lot of benches, those three teams, and you can't expect a lot of bench points over the coming period from those teams to help you out. So, what do you think of them, GM?
Yeah, so it's interesting with Wolves, because obviously a lot of people are thinking about, should I keep Cunha, following a few blanks. And what I would say is, if you block someone like Isak, who I love for the next three, I wouldn't mind selling him. I also watched Leicester back, a bit of Leicester footage versus Brighton. And I was quite impressed. I thought Brighton posed them quite a unique problem with their wider players playing quite narrow and their fullback so high. And Leicester's compactness and the overall structure of their defense was quite impressive. And even Ipswich have a lot of talent, like Muric, Leif Davis, Hutchinson, Delap. They've got good players, and I wouldn't be surprised if they could do something against Wolves as well. So I'm probably more open to like selling Cunha if it is specifically for Isak, but otherwise I would say you would hold. And touching on Isak again, he's the one I would like for this next 3 weeks, especially with Callum Wilson now being out for a couple of months. I think the expected minutes should be fine, and on penalties with 2 home games. So he's the one that I'm really looking at targeting. And I imagine you alluded to a Chelsea player called Enzo Fernandez. Am I right?
Yeah. I know you've had someone on Twitter ask you to, or one of our own contributors, Chris Tan, I think, said wants you to sell Enzo to him this evening. So maybe now's the time for you to talk about Enzo.
Yeah, sure. I think firstly, it's really tough to say he's either a definite buy or a definite sell. I think it's much more in the middle, and open to interpretation. I would say his main competition at that price point is Morgan Rogers. Even though there's 0.4 between them, a lot of people would have picked him up before. So they're really competing for the same spot at roughly a similar price. Personally, I prefer Morgan Rogers. I think as an out and out attacker, he's slightly better, and I prefer the longevity of his fixtures. They pick up from 19. So that's that. With Enzo, it's very much about what position is he going to play and what role is he going to play in that position, right? So you assume he plays a lot of his minutes are left centre mid. And it's for me, how much is he going to be able to get into the box? Is he going to be box crushing? And I don't think he'll be doing that at the highest frequency. So whilst I think there is definitely an avenue to points, I would say he's more of a floor type of player where I think I can get a bit more ceiling, I guess, out of Morgan Rogers. So personally, I prefer Rogers, but I don't think it's a bad pick with the floor attached.
Just a couple of, we're both Chelsea supporters, but do you think he's pretty nailed in that starting 11? And do you think his position as that kind of more forward seeking, just behind the 10 kind of role, do you think that's fixed now in Maresca's plans, or do you think he's still likely to switch it about?
So I think we'll definitely, one thing we've seen from Maresca a lot this year is a lot of tactical flexibility, and it's probably one of the things that's impressed me most. And Enzo originally is a deep line playmaker, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the pivot in some games. Even against Spurs in the second half, it was more of a hybrid role as opposed to an out and out 8. So I think he'll get minutes to left centre mid, and his majority of minutes are there. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the pivot for mainly like one game where there's less of a need for physicality and a defensive presence, and more of a need to control in early phases.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. We've got some other players in the kind of stick or twist mold, Rich. You brought it through up, and Mbeumo, Chris Woods. We mentioned Cunha, Gabriel, and Gvardiol, and it's obviously a lot of others. But it feels like we're transitioning away from the game week 6 wildcard team and the game week 10 or 11 transfer sort of in now over to new players. And
yeah,
firstly, I've got Wood, and I just can't sell him. I just think it doesn't matter who he plays. I think he looks good. And Mbeumo was an interesting one. So I held on to him last week. I think I'm going to sell him this week. The fixtures do turn really, really bad. What are your thoughts on kind of Gvardiol, Gabriel, and these sorts of players, Rich? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, all these guys on here, they've all smashed it this season at various times, haven't they? They're all potentially top scoring players in the game week, very consistent. People who sold Mbeumo, including me last week, sold him to get Saka in, immediately paying for it. One of the reasons I sold Mbeumo was I have Wissa, so I still had some Brentford cover for the home games. But I still regret not owning him anymore. And what do we do with Gabriel now? The saga continues over his injury with still no, and we're not going to get any clarity from Arteta on his availability this weekend. We know he's now got a muscular injury, so it's a legitimate injury. But is he going to play? He's the sort of player you'll sell him, and then he'll play against Everton and he'll score from a couple of corners, a bit like Palmer did. Scored a couple last week. So it's a very high risk sell, isn't it? It all depends, I guess, on the health of your defence and whether or not you've got other players that at least can have some minutes. Guardiola, is the outstanding defender pick in a very poor and inconsistent City side at the moment. So do you twist on him and go for Trent, or bring in a Liverpool asset? So all of these have a business case for keeping, but equally now most of the template teams are Salah, Palmer, Saka type constructs, or moving the final pieces around to get to that. There aren't that many positions that you can gain from. So we're now all playing a game around that fixed midfield, and that these are the positions that we need to change, or potentially change, even when there's nothing wrong with them. Because last week was a week where patience paid off for people that kept.
You mentioned Enzo and Isak, Jian. Are there any other players who you're kind of really interested in over the next few weeks?
Yeah, so for the next few weeks, I think Robinson's fixtures swing in 17, and so do Fulham's. And I think when we're talking about how cheap defenders have been very helpful this year, right, considering the lack of clean sheets, and the fact that he's been getting assists quite fairly regularly, especially at the start of the season when a lot of us owned him. I quite like Robinson from 17. Moving on a few weeks, I think Palace is swinging 19, and I've been impressed by their upturn and their improvement. So I think an Eze, a Munoz, a Mateta, that's something you could definitely plan for and hold for a while. I completely echo Rich's thoughts on Gabriel. I think it's a very high risk sell, and especially with the current game state, I'm not sure I would be making that. And the last thing is, and this is something I was just thinking about for my own team, a lot of us own Jackson now, and the fixtures appear to be really good. I do think, however, there is a benching for him potentially in 18 or 19, given Maresca's shown he's willing to rotate. And I wouldn't mind selling him at that point to move into someone like a Mateta, for example, even if it is a week early, just to capture those expected minutes.
Would you sell Jackson for Isak
this week?
Yes.
I really like the Jackson fixture this week. It's tough, but then obviously Isak's got such a great run. I'm more open to it if the transfers aren't necessarily definitely needed next week. I am somewhat open to it because I am really bullish on Isak now, and I'm starting to just decrease on Jackson a little after this week, though. I like the fixture for this week.
Just on premium defense, we've got Saliba, who's obviously scored in both his last two, and Trent as well. Are there any appetite from either of you guys to kind of push some money at the back, or...
Yeah, I'll probably bring in Trent in this week.
Oh wow, okay, that's interesting.
So that's one of the reasons I put him on there, because I just think I've got to buy a defender. My defense, you'll see when we look at the teams, it's just ravaged. So I've got to buy a defender, and I think just I've got a spot that I can move some get some money from. So the Enzo transfer generates a lot of cash for me, so I can make a pretty aggressive set of transfers this week to which includes Trent at the back. I could go Gomez. He's probably going to be the AI recommendation just because he's so cheap compared to Trent. But I actually think that it's something of a differential going into Christmas, and I like that. I like that upside. I owned him for pretty much a dozen weeks, and he didn't do anything. Yeah. But I only sold him because he was injured against Southampton, and now I want him back again. So,
how about you, Jan?
So I do like a premium defender, but it's not one of the two you mentioned. I like Virgil. So the reason I prefer him to Trent is because 0.6 million. I think it's quite a bit, especially nowadays. That's Sean Dyche, right? For me in Gameweek 24-25. And then the other thing is, I'm just slightly concerned if Trent ever gets a benching. I think Arne Slot's done magnificently well at managing his minutes. Yeah. And him coming off around 70 when you really want attack and returns for him, I don't think is the best thing. And I feel like I can get a goal out of Virgil. He could have easily had a hat trick against City. So yeah, there's enough box there for me there to justify Virgil, albeit Trent's still Trent, right? So such a brilliant option in his own right.
My friend and I were watching the Liverpool Man City game, and he had something like a tenner. He had a free bet of a tenner or a fiver to put on Van Dijk to score a header, and it was 20-1, and it was just unbelievable, wasn't it? He had three, as you say, three headers, which all should have scored. Yeah, interesting. I've got Timber, which I think I've got Timber and Gabriel, so I probably feel like I'm kind of all right because I'm happy with that. It's one of the benefits of maybe not having Raya. I'd probably like to have Raya. I mean, my keepers are rubbish, especially now. Even though now Sodzo is the time when Flecken's good run is over. Now he'll probably start to keep some clean sheets as
I'm not sure
the way FPL works. But I'm happy with Timber, but I do like Salah or Trent. I think one. I think I'm going to hold on to Gabriel because just whenever he plays, I mean, those corners are just insane, and it kind of smacks a bit of. If he comes back in a week or two, the fixtures the next 3 are really, really nice, aren't they? It's especially.
Well, that's right. He's just an example of a player that as soon as he's available again, you're going to have to spend a transfer getting him back in because he's without a doubt the most attacking defender in the game, and he's arguably replaced Trent as the defender most likely to get attacking returns.
Yeah.
Even though Trent's numbers are still good, he's only got 3 assists all season. Trent, he hasn't scored.
Yeah.
And I think Gabriel's got 4 or 5 goals already, hasn't he? So he's just incredible. So he's a hard sell. He's a really, really hard sell. But then so are some of the other guys on that sheet. So that's why I just thought it was a topical moment because most of our teams look good, don't they?
They do.
And you haven't really got much wriggle room in them.
Predicted points for the next 4 weeks over Christmas. Mo Salah, top of the shop, 31.7. Palmer, second, 30.8. All these stats are from Fantasy Football Hub. Haaland, 29.8. Saka, 27.6. Isak, 25.7. Son, 22. Cunha, 22. Wood, 21. Jackson, 20. And then Mateta, Foden, Eze, as you mentioned there, Jan, their fixture to improve. Bruno Fernandes, 20. Solanke. Interesting, Robertson is ahead of Trent at 5.9. He kind of thinks that he's going to get the minutes. Watkins, Havertz, and Mbeumo and Odegaard. So yeah, like looking at the top of that, those first 6 or 7 points. Looking at my team, I haven't got Haaland. I've got Salah, Palmer, Saka, Isak. I'm don't enough Son. I think I'm bringing in Cunha this week, which is probably contrary to lots.
For who?
Probably João Pedro.
Oh wow, that's a brave transfer.
I think.
I really like the Wood hold though. I think he's
I'm definitely holding
really
home. I think are they home to Villa this week?
Yeah,
I think he scores. I think he scores home to Villa. I really do. So yeah, I think I'll hold 8 or 6 or 7 of the top 8 or 9 players there. And the one I don't own Haaland. I mean, 15 million. It's just crazy. And Son is kind of, Spurs are good, but they're kind of in and out of their form, aren't they? So so some interesting points there. The Hub AI Gameweek 60 wildcard team. So this is what Hub AI would pick if it was wildcard in this week. There's a player or two on here I'm kind of interested in. It's picked out Forster. Still, obviously, he's in for Spurs for the foreseeable. Mega cheap at 4.3, and Valdemarson just as a cheap keeper. It does go for Trent, Rich. You'll be pleased to see a double up of Trent and Gomez. For 4.9 as expected. I'll pronounce this wrong, but Hudson, Bournemouth defender, 4.3 is in there, and then 2 Van der Berg because he's so cheap, and O'Shea is the starter. Midfield of Palmer, Salah, Saka, Semenyo is one I'm still. So I transferred Semenyo out last week. I was thinking of transferring him back in for a hit this week. We'll touch on that.
Well, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with him, is there? That's the thing.
No touching on.
Bournemouth are over the last 6 weeks. I think they're the most attacking side in the league on the stats.
Yeah, exactly. I transferred him out for a hit. I'm thinking of transferring him back in for a hit this week, but we'll touch more on that when we get to it. And the front 3, which I'm hoping to end up with, actually, Isak, Cunha, and Wood, is still the Hub AI wildcard team in there. It looks pretty sensible. Any kind of massive
yeah, I'm very surprised. No Arsenal defender. I'm really surprised about that. Not necessarily the double up. I'm never a big fan of double ups, but I'm surprised at the keeper choice because Tottenham's defense is pretty rocky.
Yeah.
That surprised me. I mean, the midfield obviously speaks for itself. That's fine. And I'm also the bench I think is too weak for the Christmas period.
Yeah, that
would be my input. Is that 2 4.0s is not going to get you through Christmas.
The AI loves to get the points. It loves to get the points on the pitch. I mean, these players on the bench will play, but they 1 2 pointers probably. So, any feedback, Jan, on that at all?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting selection to go for Cunha on the wild card. I know he's got the 2 promoted fixtures, but after that, the run's pretty tough. And I don't trust Wolves necessarily, and he's quite expensive now, right? 7-1 compared to what he started at. And when João Pedro exists, he's so cheap, and he's just so good at football as well, that he can just generate returns for that. I'm not sure.
You still think João Pedro is a good hold then, Jian?
Yeah, I think at his price point, he facilitates the rest of the team wonderfully well, and I think he could be a really nice hold for a while. He also seems somewhat fixture proof, like he returned against United, he did it against Arsenal earlier in the season. So I quite like holding him just pretty much forever and just building my rest of the team with some more cash.
That's what I think. Yeah.
With Cunha, I get it. I get it with the fixtures. So he's home to Leicester. These next 2 are beautiful, right? Home to United and away to Spurs. If you're looking at the teams as the teams, I get it. But United at home, there's nothing to fear for Cunha there. Spurs away, nothing to fear for Cunha there. I just think that I think I was incredibly unfortunate in the first 4 weeks of holding because I went for Jimenez, right? It was if you remember at the time how much of 50-50 it was. Yeah. It was absolutely 50-50.
He made so many chances, didn't he?
Right? Yeah, he did. So it was so 50-50. But these last 2 game weeks, I feel I've got away with it because he hasn't returned against West Ham and he blanked last week as well. And I just feel he's a bit of a missing link in my team that when he kicked off, I had a red arrow basically. So that's part of the reason why I want to get him in as well. And he's a bloody good option in his own right. It's not just about kind of covering it, but that front 3, Isak, Cunha and Woods, I think it looks really, really good for the next 2 or 3. But it will need a hit. So and Buemo was going for me this week. I need to decide whether to go for Semenyo, who has some nice fixtures, or Enzo. I just need to give it a little bit of thought, but we will touch on our teams in a little bit. Quick look at the stats ahead of game week 16. The teams predicted to score the most goals. Liverpool at home to Fulham, 2.51. Chelsea home to Brentford, 2.48. Nothing in it. So that's Salah and Palmer we're talking about. Newcastle actually 2.39 against Leicester, so just behind again. Obviously Isak, we've mentioned Isak there, and that doesn't include Arsenal over 2 goals as well. Brighton over 2 goals to Palace, and Spurs over 2 goals. There are some mean fixtures this week to target.
Not going to be many clean sheets this week, are there?
Not, especially away clean sheets, because most of these teams we're talking about are at home as well. And clean sheets, Arsenal favourite, 59% chance of clean sheet at home to Everton. You've probably got to think that Arsenal, I wouldn't say will keep a clean sheet, but as good a chance as any as it stands. Spurs with a 57% chance away to Southampton, and Newcastle 48% chance against Leicester. So
how high was Spurs? What was Spurs?
57% chance away to
Southampton.
I don't agree with that. I don't
no Van der Ven, no Romero. Southampton can play football.
There's a bug. There's a bug in the software.
we will, but they have got Forster in goals. Remember, so it'll be fine. No, we will see. We'll see what's going on there. Don't forget, Spurs kept a clean sheet 2 weeks ago away to Man City as well. So maybe there's a bit of that in there as well.
Very fortunate.
There's the stats there. And what it means for the captaincy. I mean, this is absolutely superb. So, who is the best captain in the poll on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk? Salah is top with 38% of the vote. Palmer second, 36% of the vote. Just 2% between them. Saka quite a distant third actually, with just 12%. And in predicted points, again, you can get these for yourselves at fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Do you want to guess who is top of predicted points for the week?
For this week?
Yep.
Palmer
is top, 8.1. That is high. Salah is second, 7.8. Haaland third, 7.8. Isak 7.2. Saka 7.1. Cunha 6. My goodness me. We just had a long conversation, chaps, about captaincy, about going for it, being different, FOMO. Rich, what are your thoughts on captaincy this week?
Well, I'm pretty much sure I'm going to put it on Salah. I've only had one Salah haul all season, which is when I bought him after I.
Or of his 10 hauls, you mean?
Weeks. Exactly. I went one. So I'm still ready to have some more Salah. Thank you very much. But I think that Fulham game last season was a hell of a game. I think they lost maybe 4-3, didn't they, or something, or 4 each or something. They really gave Liverpool a good game, and I think they'll go for it again. They're looking good, Fulham, at the moment, so it is wide open. I just can't see Palmer getting another couple of penalties. I mean, you can't go two penalties, can he?
He'll need to. Well, he's not going to need to.
Doesn't need them.
A home to Brentford.
I know he's a great option, and just owning all three players now isn't enough, is it? You've got to nail the captain out of the three of them. However, look at what happened to Saka. Look, Saka scored 2 goals and an assist last night in the Champions League. So he's done when Haaland scored 5 goals either side of his blank. It's happening with Saka now. You can't write Saka off home to Everton. I mean, that could be 4-5-0 to Arsenal, that game. It's a much better game than the Fulham away game. So Saka, I think, has to be in the conversation. But having just taken a massive slap on Saka, I'm not going to put it on him again.
So you're on Salah?
Salah or Palmer. Salah.
How about you, Jan?
I'm on Palmer. I think the poll, though, is a wonderful reflection of where the captaincy state is this week. Like, it was 38 to 86%, and I really do think it's that close this week. There's so little in it between those two. I think Saka's a decent option as well. And if I knew that Timber was going to play it right back, maybe I'd be more inclined to think about it. But I think there's probably just a bit too much risk associated with it. I've been really impressed by my Marco Silva this season in Fulham. They've been really good off the ball as well.
This is it.
And I'm probably just backing that and the fact that I know I'll get some form an aggressive performance from Brentford, and hopefully Palmer can capitalize on that, and hence why I'm going there as opposed to going for Salah.
I think I'm going to go for Salah, but I'm just thinking 10 double-digit hauls in 14 game weeks is just, and he's home. It's just mental. Like, Palmer is fantastic. Home to Brentford is a fantastic fixture. So at the moment I'm earning on Salah, but I'm really not sure. I got to be honest. It's going to be one of those, sort of last half an hour, how it feels. I very much end up like a bit of a gut play with half hour to go. I might look at the polls a little bit again just to see, but at the moment Salah. But it made up. I don't think I'm going to go to Saka, just because I do think Everton will just shut up shop and make it really hard for Arsenal. Saka's fantastic, Arsenal fantastic, but those other two are much better. I actually prefer the Palmer fixture, definitely home to Brentford. So we will see. Fergie is a complete punt for game week 16. I was a complete punt last week. I'm so sorry. I made a shocking call last week. I got a bit excited. I tried to be a bit too clever. I went for Madweki. Didn't even start, Rich. Didn't even start. So there was after my form was finished. So I did have a couple of punts this week. I still like Evan Nielsen. Enzo was a little bit obvious. So I tried to be I tried to be different, which obviously sometimes it works. Genius. Sometimes it doesn't, so you look like an absolute fool, as I did last week. So I have gone for a player this week. I don't think he's even been mentioned probably all season in the realms of sort of FPL picks. But he's 2.7% owned. He's not guaranteed to start, but when he does start, he generally does really well. Now this team have got 3 good. I think they've got 3. Well, actually 4. Well, actually 5 really good attacking fixtures coming up. They're home to Fulham, away to Spurs, home to Leicester, away to West Ham, home to United. I think this player can get a real handful of returns in this. 2.7% owned, and I am going to go for Cody Gakpo over this period, because I just think when Liverpool are in this sort of imperious form, even Salah captain isn't enough to capitalise. I get the Trent one, Rich, but when Gakpo plays, he generally scores, and he's capable of bracing as well. Jota's nowhere near back. Nunes all over the shop. Diaz kind of in and out. Gakpo looks the solid number 2 best pick.
I think Gakpo starts this one again. Darwin couldn't hit a barn door, could he, in midweek? So
no.
Jota's back in training though, isn't he? Just in terms of the expected minutes going forward.
Yeah, I can't see Jota getting much. I just think the Gakpo. I do get it, and it is punty, but I can see Gakpo starting 2 of this next 3 and getting 2 or 3 returns. Of this next 3. We just had a super chat, which we don't have many of. It's of Jaskaran Bula, and he says Jan looks so much like Indian singer Karan Ayujla. Jan, so I don't know whether you've heard of.
I mean, I know he's very famous. I know who he is.
Well, apparently you're his spitting image, mate.
It's better than Gary Anderson, though, mate. Whatever he looks like.
I get called the one off that Ricky Gervais show. Who's the gormless bloody idiot? Who's an idiot abroad? What's his name? Carl Pilkington. Come on.
That's right.
Carl Pilkington. I would rather be called Karen Avila or Gary Anderson than Carl bloody Pilkington. Anyway, just before we look at our teams, just a reminder, we currently have a Christmas present offer on at the moment, 30 days free of our Fantasy Football Hub. You can do so right now. Top link in the description below. This includes our My Team features, including recommended transfers, predicted points through AI, dedicated WhatsApp group for pro members, and we do have a new feature coming up in the next few weeks, which will be the chip optimization tool. Ben Krellin's predicted fixtures will also be in the site as well. You won't have to do anything. You won't have to do any planning yourself. If you don't want to, it will all be in there yourself. We will tell you how to optimally use your chips. Obviously only available to members, but 30 days free now if you want it. If you take the 30 days free now, there is a chance that this tool will actually be in as part of your free period. You won't be disappointed. Join the club. Join the best website and app out there, Fantasy Football Hub. You will not be disappointed. Look at our teams ahead of the weekend. Rich, we've got your team on screen at the moment. Do you just want to run through it and tell us your plans?
Okay, yeah, Raya will be in goal for me. I will chance Gabriel starting. Lewis Hall will start in the Newcastle home game, which is nice. And then it's, who do I play? You know, there's no points there. I've got Mikalenko away to Arsenal. I've got Jacob Greaves, who's gone absent without leave. No, God knows where he's gone. And Rico Lewis is suspended. So it's absolute decimation in the defence. Potentially 4 players who aren't going to score any points. In the midfield's fine. It's Palmer, Salah, Saka, captain on Salah. I still have Bruno Fernandes. We haven't mentioned him all programme at all. I've kept him over Mbuemo as something of a differential. After this City game, if you look at United's home games all the way through to February, they're excellent. They're really, really good. But I'm not sure I can get through the City game without selling Bruno to an enabler. Up front, I have Cunha, João Pedro, and Wissa, who again is a little bit of a differential for me, and some Brentford cover. But again, he's vulnerable this week. On the bench, it's Fabianski, Rogers, Greaves, and Lewis. What I'm thinking of doing, and I really do want your opinion on this, I've got 2 transfers. I want to change it up. I don't want to take a hit, and I don't really care about the 4 points. Okay, so I'm going to sell Bruno to Enzo. I'm going to sell Vissa to Isak, and I'm going to sell Lewis for Trent for a -4.
Assume you need to make all those changes to get the
well,
funds to make all the changes.
I need to do that. I've got 1.5 in the bank. The Bruno to Enzo move will get me to 4.9 million, and I can just afford the upgrade from Lewis to Trent and Vissa to Isak. I can't afford João Pedro to Isak, but Vissa's fixtures are not good. So I think that's an upgrade, and I think I'll get those 4 points back.
So I think the big upgrade is in the defense, right? Because your defense is really weak for this week without Gabriel certain to start. And I think based on that, especially when you're bringing in someone like Trent, it's easier to justify. Are you quite confident that Wissa doesn't score or return against us?
I'm not confident. I really like Wissa.
Yeah.
And he's kind of flying under the radar for me a little bit because not many people own him. So when he does do well, it helps my rank out a lot, or, has done, because I've scored, he's got me 4 goals in my last 4 weeks. So he's a great player, great value for 6.2. It's just, I can't really sell João Pedro because I haven't got the funds for those moves. And it's stupid to sell Cunha when he's got Ipswich at home, right? So if I sold Cunha for Isak, I've got more money.
Yeah, because what I would say is it's basically like Isak versus Wissa and 4 points. That's essentially the equation, right?
Yeah. Over one game though, Isak has a nice run, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's true. I quite like Wissa. I'm not sure I would personally do the Wissa to Isak move because I wouldn't be surprised if he scores against us. But yeah, the other 2 moves I like.
Okay,
I like him, Rich. You're getting a lot of love in the chat as well. We haven't had one person I don't think say no. They've all said FPL Mackham, absolute beauty move. John W, like those moves, Rich. So yeah, you're getting a lot of love there, Rich. AI transfers, Lewis to Gomez. That's the optimized one. And the aggressive move, Rich, is Gabriel to Gomez and Vissa to Isak interestingly enough. That is your aggressive transfer this week. Don't forget, those watching, you can get your recommended transfers. You can change the setting to aggressive, optimal, or conservative as well. And obviously the aggressive one is looking at a bit more of a shorter timeline. But yeah,
so that allows me to keep Bruno as well, doesn't it? That aggressive
Gabriel
one.
to Gomez, Visser to Isak, and you save -4. But yeah, interesting.
Save -4 and keep. Yeah, I mean, it's a decent. Yeah, AA's worked hard for me there. That's good. I'll give that some consideration. Thank you.
Jan, we have your team on screen. Do you want to run us through it? Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, so Sanchez, who might not be here for too long if I think he gets rotated, might use a free transfer to get him out down the line. Happy with my defense this week. I've got Lewis Hall at home to Leicester, Aït-Nouri at home to Ipswich, and then it'll either be Gabriel at home to Everton or Dunk at home to Palace. I really don't like the Dunk fixture, but I'm not using a free transfer for that. Same as Rich, Salah, Saka, Palmer, the big three, and then Bowen, who, you know what, even though I'm 1 point down on the Mbeumo to Bowen transfer because he got a yellow card after the game, I'm still really happy with it. And he played after him as well, right? So it felt good. So yeah. Hopefully he starts at 9 against Bournemouth. I think that'll be good for him. And then up top, Jackson, João Pedro, which I really like for this week. And then it will be not Ollie Watkins, but Alexander Isak, because I'm going to bring him back in.
Yeah.
You're going to sell Watkins.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's sensible, Jan.
Is there something wrong with Watkins? Is
he picked up an injury against Leipzig, Unai Emery said.
Okay.
Like a small one. So yeah.
Your optimized AA transfer this week, Jan, is Watkins to Isak, as per your plan. And the aggressive one is Watkins to Isak and Jackson to Cunha. That's obviously looking at that shorter timeline.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting stuff there, Jan. You're very, very well placed. Got a beautiful team there, mate. Nice defense this week as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Quick look at my team. Will I play either Flecken or Fabianski? I mean, pick your poison. Awful there. Either of those. Back four, I've got Aït-Nouri and Timber, which I'm quite pleased to hold those two. And then I've got Gabriel, who I will start. I've got Greaves and Lewis. So I may end up with just 2 defenders this week, but I think I might get some minutes out of either Gabriel or Greaves, maybe. But again, I'm not in the market for defenders at the moment. I just don't feel there's any with the even Trent. I just don't feel there's any defenders with the necessary upside to move me away from making transfers further up the pitch. That's where all the goals are. That's where all the points are for me. Palmer, Salah, Saka. I've got Mbeumo there at the moment and Rodgers on the bench, and then Isak, Wood, and João Pedro. So my thinking this week is Mbeumo has done a cracking job for me. I can go Mbeumo to either Semenyo or Enzo. I quite like the Semenyo one still. The Enzo one for me is I would only do the Enzo move if I desperately needed the money, but I don't for the move I want to make. So I think Semenyo is actually a pretty forward-thinking move, and I think it actually rotates quite nicely with Rodgers over the next sort of 3 or 4 as well. And then, so João Pedro up to Cunha. Now, I'm very aware that both taking out Mbeumo and João Pedro for a -4 could be painful, but I really want Cunha for these next. I haven't looked at the ownerships, but I just know every time Cunha scores, it's like a dig in the ribs. It really hurts. Just like, oh, it really hurts. So I think I've got enough of a differential in engaged managers in having Wood and Timber anyway. I think they're quite decent differentials on engaged managers, and I know it's silly, right? But after even though the hit wasn't successful this week, I can get Timber out this week. So that saved me a hit there, right? I just think hit worked last week. Take a hit this week. Move my team on. I know it's probably it's not the right way to think, but while I'm on the crest of a small wave, I may as well just make the moves I want to make and be excited for games and not hide behind the sofa, because that's the worst kind of way to play FPL. So any thoughts, gents, before we look?
I mean, I was watching that West Ham. I mean, Cunha, right, is about 10 times better than anybody else in that team, isn't he?
Yeah,
exactly. Literally just stands out so much more. But they're a poor side, Fergie. I'm not sure I would invest in them now. I thought obviously you don't sell Cunha if you've got him, but they had their little couple of wins.
Yeah, I get it.
You know, but that was 3 weeks ago. They've lost 3 on the bounce. They've only got 2 good games left before the fixtures turn quite badly for them. I think you've got Isak in already. You're keeping Wood because he's why wouldn't you keep Wood? And João Pedro's perfectly all right. So I get what you're saying, but I think you don't necessarily need to take the hit for Cunha. I mean, you could just get Semenyo and keep the 4 points.
I'm being urged in the chat to roll or get Enzo.
Yeah, well,
because if I get Enzo, I can then get a defender next week potentially.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I'd buy Cunha now.
Yeah, same. I think it's so difficult to justify it because all right, let's take his returns, right? So he scores a screamer against Southampton, an absolute screamer. He scores another screamer against Fulham. The other goal he scored, he plucks out from the air. And it's a beautiful finish. And 2 of the goals and 2 of his returns, or one of his returns, came pretty late on when Fulham were going for it. Leicester genuinely are like better under Ruud van Nistelrooy, and Ipswich are a decent side.
That's a good point.
And then the fixtures after. I know what you said about Spurs away, and I agree, but I think Man United's a difficult fixture from an attacking standpoint. You saw how compact they were against Arsenal and how difficult they were to beat. Forest they just conceded some stupid goals, right? So yeah, I personally, especially when you're selling an asset like João Pedro, who's going to help you down the line because he's so cheap, and you probably picked him up at quite cheap.
His fixtures actually, João Pedro after this week, away to West Ham, home to Brentford. They're really good.
Yeah, so I don't think you can think. Also, I'd start Fabianski over Flecken if I
start Fabianski. Okay, I like that. My optimized transfer recommendation this week is Luis to Gomez. Unsurprisingly, makes absolute sense. I could actually just do that, and then I'm guaranteed a back 3 out and a decent front 7. And that's also my aggressive transfer as well. So they're the same. I've obviously only got 1 transfer. So Luis to Gomez, not a bad shout. FPL Mackham, Cunha's XG is only 0.2 in the last 6. Interesting. Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone in the chat, and thanks to you guys as well. You probably changed my mind, I think, on this now. I was getting a bit excited ahead of myself. And taking out Mbeumo and João Pedro, like, they're both on penalties. They're both in the team for a reason. I know they've been slightly,
There's nothing, as we were saying in the slides earlier, there's nothing wrong with them, is there? There's nothing wrong with them.
It's not.
It's a luxury transfer.
Absolutely.
But I don't feel the same about Isak. Isak feels like he's almost a community must-own, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got him already. You're getting him in. I just feel I've got to get him. I mean, I could get him. I could sell Cunha for him. And do it in 1 tranche. No, I couldn't. I've got to do. I could do it without a hit though. If I don't, but I got.
Yeah, because you could just sell Bruno, but then your defense would probably be a little light.
Fix my defense. I got to fix my defense. I think the sensible move is to spend 2 transfers in defense, but I can't quite bring myself to do that. All right, good stuff. Good chat, guys. That's really helpful.
It was. Yeah, and that is it from us for this week. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined in the chat. Those going to watch it back and those listening on the podcast versions, your support is very, very much appreciated. As always, we really, really do appreciate it. Rich, thank you as usual. Where can people get hold of you?
On @Rich Clarke FPL on Blue Sky and Twitter.
And Jian, absolute superstar as usual. Fantastic insight. Having a fantastic season. Very, very well played, mate. Where can people get hold of you?
Thank you. On YouTube at FPL Jian Batra and on X at the same tag.
And I'm on X and Blue Sky at FFH_Fergi. This podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. Leave us 5 stars. Say hello. We'd really appreciate it. Big news. Drum roll. We will be back. Able to hear me. I did such a good drum roll then that I knocked my mic off. But we have got some really exciting news. We are back next week with a festive special with none other than Mr. Adam Hopcroft to preview game week 17, 18 and in 3 game weeks. We're mega excited. In the meantime, we hope you have a fantastic game week 16 and may all your arrows be green. Good night all.